All right, let's get right into a pretty amazing space mystery. Back in 1969, right before we first set foot on the moon, a really important piece of space history was basically shot out into the void, and then it just vanished. We're talking about the Apollo 10 lunar module, which had the perfect nickname, Snoopy, and for half a century, nobody knew where it was.
Just try to picture it. The Apollo 10 crew, they've just finished this perfect dress rehearsal for the moon landing. They release Snoopy, but there's a small issue with the pressure, and it just zips away, way faster than anyone expected, right into the blinding glare of the sun. And just like that, poof, it was gone.
So that became one of the great unanswered questions from the Apollo missions. I mean, how does a 4-meter-wide spacecraft, a craft that astronauts were literally just inside of, just disappear into the solar system? Well, it turns out, an incredible story of cosmic detective work might have just found the answer. To really get why finding Snoopy is such a big deal, we need to talk about what makes it so unique. You see, unlike every other lunar module from the Apollo program, this one wasn't just trashed, it was sent on a wild journey all its own.
The whole mission was this incredibly tense, nail-biting success. Astronauts Thomas Stafford and Eugene Cernan flew Snoopy all the way down to within just 15 kilometers of the lunar surface. They tested every single system that Apollo 11 would need just 2 months later to make history.
And to see just how special Snoopy is, just look at what happened to the other 9 lunar modules. Most of them were designed to be disposable, either burned up in our atmosphere or deliberately smashed into the moon. Even the heroic lifeboat from Apollo 13, Aquarius, ended up meeting a fiery end. But one, and only one, was sent adrift into deep space.
This is what makes Snoopy a completely one-of-a-kind historical artifact. It's the only vehicle humans have ever been inside of to be abandoned in an orbit around the sun. It's like a true ghost ship sailing through the cosmos. Finding it would be like recovering a lost ship from the age of exploration.
So, the big question is, how did it end up on this 50-year-long trip? Well, it wasn't a complete accident. NASA gave it one last push, but the result was an orbit that nobody, back in 1969, could really track.
You see, after the astronauts lost sight of Snoopy, there was a very real fear that it could drift back and actually crash into their command module. So Mission Control made the call, use up all its remaining fuel for one final engine burn, and send it far away from the moon, out into the great unknown.
Now, to understand what happened next, think about it like this. The Earth is speeding around the sun at about 30 kilometers a second. Snoopy, being in orbit around the moon, was basically tagging along for the ride. But that final engine burn was pointed against that direction of travel. It was literally like slamming on the brakes in the middle of a cosmic highway.
And this brake slam had a massive effect. Because it had less forward speed to fight against the sun's gravity, Snoopy's orbit got pulled inward, inside of Earth's own path. So now it was on a shorter, faster track, and it actually started to outpace our own planet.
And the result of that cosmic maneuver? A brand new solar orbit of just 342 days. So, every single year for the past 5 decades, Snoopy has been lapping our planet, getting further and further ahead in its race around the sun.
So for decades, Snoopy was just out there, lost. But astronomers knew that because of orbital mechanics, it would have to swing back near the Earth every so often. And so the hunt for this astronomical holy grail was on.
But let's be real, the scale of this challenge is it's mind-boggling. Even when you've got calculations that narrow down the search area, you're still trying to spot an object the size of a small car millions of kilometers away. It's an extraordinary challenge.
So for almost 50 years, there was nothing, crickets. Then, in 2018, right when it was predicted to make a close approach, astronomers spotted something. A very faint little object moving in a very, very interesting way.
And this is where the detective work gets really fascinating. When they analyzed this object, it just didn't behave like your typical asteroid. You know, asteroids often have these weird, oval-shaped, tilted orbits. This thing? Its orbit was nearly a perfect circle and on the exact same plane as Earth's, which is a huge clue that it came from here. Plus, its speed was a near-perfect match for what they'd predicted.
And then came the real clincher. Astronomers had already calculated exactly how bright a reflective object with Snoopy's specific size and materials should look at that distance. And the light they were getting from this mysterious object? It was a perfect match. I mean, the circumstantial evidence was just piling up.
So, okay, we have a prime suspect, an extremely good one. But how do we get that final 100% confirmation? Well, the answer lies in a technique that lets us figure out what the object is actually made of.
This amazing technique is called spectroscopy. Basically, every material out there, rock, ice, metal, it has a unique fingerprint in the light it reflects. By analyzing the light bouncing off the object, scientists can tell if it's made of rock and ice, like an asteroid, or if it's made of the very specific metals and materials used to build a 1960s-era spacecraft.
Now, here's the catch. Back in 2018, the object was just too far away and way too faint to get a good, clean reading. But, and this is the beautiful thing about orbital mechanics, we know exactly when it'll be back for a much closer look.
So mark your calendars for 2028. That is when this mysterious object makes its next close flyby of Earth. And that's our golden opportunity to finally use spectroscopy and solve this mystery, once and for all.
There's something really poetic about all this. Snoopy was sent away on this completely wild, 50-year journey across the solar system, but the fundamental laws of gravity mean that it has to keep coming back, periodically calling home to check in on its home planet.
So what this all really means is that we are right on the verge of possibly rediscovering this unique, irreplaceable artifact from the very dawn of the space age. And in just a few short years, we might finally get confirmation that after half a century lost in space, Snoopy is at last calling home.